All right, I am Robert Moore. I am here sitting with my grandmother, Leslie Moore, and my grandfather, George Moore. I will be referring to them as Grandma and Grandpa during the interview. All right, so here we go. So just for clarification's sake for the video, so when we're doing this, their maiden name is Sheets, correct?
Yes.
All right, and of course your last name is Moore because it's my last name.
Yes.
So yes. All right. Awesome. So we'll start with the Moore side, and you probably will. You did a whole ancestral.com family thing,
Yeah.
right? So you might be able to answer some of the more questions that he doesn't have answers to, and that's totally fine. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there might be some crisscrossing, and that's totally fine since you guys are married. So you know,
Yeah.
half brains or whatever. Cool. So where did the Moores immigrate from?
I don't know.
No.
We got German in the background, we got Spaniard in the background, Dutch,
Okay.
and Cherokee Indian. So I don't know if it was probably German,
Okay.
but like I say, there's pretty good mixture there.
Pretty
so.
good mixture.
French.
Do you know like how far, like if you were to go like as far back as you know of, like in terms of like passed down, do you know like where the Moors like were at before or anything like that?
Oh golly. Well, mostly Oklahoma.
Oklahoma? You don't know where they came from to Oklahoma?
No,
No. Okay. So Oklahoma would be as far back as you know for the Moor side.
pretty much, yeah.
All right. So for the rest of the questions, I'll just kind of refer back to that. Cool. What about the Sheets?
The Sheets, I know, migrated from Arkansas to Missouri, and they cleared the land and built their own homes. And that was my grandfather. My dad helped build a house in Missouri. On my mother's side, they came in the early 1620s. Not with the Mayflower, but the ships that followed the Mayflower. And
Okay.
that would be all three, Love, Cone, and Blackwood. They were all there before the Revolutionary War.
Oh wow. And where did they come from?
Okay, they lived in Ireland. They're mainly from Ireland, but during religious persecution, because they're Protestants, they migrated to Scotland, and they stayed in Scotland. They were there for about 100 years
Wow.
before they came to the colonies. Well, it wasn't even the colonies then.
Right. Yeah. It was just the New World.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. That was
Yeah,
really cool.
it's interesting.
So the Sheet side, we could say at least started, but before it became Sheets, started in the 1620s
Yeah.
from
On my mother's
Ireland-ish.
side, yeah.
Yep. Okay, that's pretty cool. And so we know that was in the 1620s. From there, in Oklahoma, how year-wise, like what kind of year do you know Oklahoma as far back as you know?
1850 something, when Oklahoma first became a territory or state.
Okay. Did they come
The
out?
land rush, they were there
Yeah.
for for
Okay, so they were part of the land rush for like sharecropping, or just
Yeah.
you get a plot of land. Is it like what 40 acres? Was that 40 acres in the middle?
Yeah, I believe
It's the
that's
same
what
thing?
it was, yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. But you don't know anything before that, or like
No, not really.
Okay, so coming at least from the Oklahoma piece, that would make. Do you know how many generations that would probably be?
Probably 4 anyway.
4. Okay, so that would make. So I being the 4th, or I being the 6th, you being the 4th.
No, probably my uncle would have been the 4th. So I would be like the 5th.
5th, and I would be like the 7th.
Seventh, yeah.
7th generation. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's actually really cool. So you'd be 5th generation from the Oklahoma, and then obviously there's probably history before that we just aren't aware of.
Right.
Cool. What about on your side?
Can't count that high. It's a long
Yeah.
time ago.
16.
I know they were in Colorado. They migrated to Colorado way back before Colorado was a state.
Was it even a territory then, or was it just land?
I think it was a territory. In the book that they have, they got diaries, pages of diaries.
Mm-hmm.
And one lady was talking about lived on the outskirts of what now is Colorado Springs, and her husband made this cradle that you rock with your foot, so the mom could be doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
And the Indians would come down. They were peaceful, and they were so enamored with that cradle that they would rock it and rock it and rock it until the baby got sick. So they put the cradle up if they saw the Indians coming.
That's actually really cute. That's really funny.
Isn't that
But like,
insane?
you know, and it's cool, like, because you actually get to see a little bit of the relational of, what do you know what tribe that would have been back then?
Colorado,
That could be.
there's Arapaho, there's Pawnee.
I was going to say Pawnee, but Pawnee was more north, wasn't it? That was more
Oh,
near
I
the
suppose
Wyoming
it's part of
border.
the
And
South. I
everything.
don't really know.
No, east, Pawnee grasslands.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, east.
Is east of Loveland.
Yeah,
Fort
but I know
Collins.
the Pawnees, through my Colorado history class, I remember this. The Pawnees used to summer up in Estes Park.
Right.
Yeah.
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 But they were obviously nomads. Could be Utes, maybe. I don't
Could be
know.
Utes. Could be
Yeah.
Utes coming. Yeah, it very well could be. I don't
Don't
think
know.
it said so in the book. It said which tribe they were.
Yeah. Okay. That'd be kind of a cool thing to go through that diary and like
It
try to
was-
piece it together to try to maybe figure out what tribe that might have been
Yeah.
based off like dates and nomadic
Mhm.
traveling that we know of. That'd be
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, we'll have to get that to you and let you read it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if I find
Chris
time to go
Mallard.
through that. Yeah.
I made a book of it. I took one book and made copies, made all
Mhm.
my kids a book. And Chris Lambert had one. I was going to
Oh.
ask him before I came to bring it in. So you can ask him to look at it.
Yeah, I would actually love to look at that.
Mhm.
That might be a fun little challenge to try to do. To just try to, as a historian, try to piece together.
Oh, you can,
yeah.
because it says all our family names are in it.
Really, and dates and everything.
Uh-huh.
Is that too? Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. Well,
It's
cool.
the Cone family that did that.
Oh, is the cone side? Okay.
That's the Cone side.
Yeah.
I had the Love and the Blackbird too, but we don't know what happened to
Yeah.
those.
So on your side, just for clarification's sake, so we have the cones, the sheets, Blackwoods, and what was it? Loves, like Love. Okay, that's cool. No relation to Loveland, right?
No,
Okay.
no. The Blackwoods were related to the Blackwood brothers, who were gospel singers.
Oh, I think I remember you telling me that
Their
actually.
grandfather and their grandfather and my grandma's dad would be my great grandfather brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They got a plot of land from President Buchanan in Kansas for fighting in the Revolutionary War. And the rest of them stayed in Ohio, and my great grandfather, he took the land in Kansas, and that's where my grandmother was born.
Oh wow, wow, that's really cool.
My
You're
sister
actually
still has that piece of paper with that deed.
wow. That's not more primary sources. That's all I keep thinking about. It like, oh, we have all these primary sources, and it's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, cool. You guys are answering a lot of the questions that I have already. I was like, the next one was going to be what was going on in the world at the time of the immigration, and you already talked about the Mayflower and the religious persecution that was
Yeah.
happening in
Yeah.
Oklahoma, the land rush, which is a huge historical piece
Yeah.
of our country. So that's
Yeah.
cool. And we already talked about how these impacted the families.
Well, his whole family was sharecroppers. Before they moved here from Oklahoma, he could tell you a story about that sharecropping. It wasn't nice. It was
Yeah.
hard.
Before we moved to Colorado, Dad was a sharecropper. Then it got to the point where he wasn't making anything.
Right.
You
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was
the weather
okay.
contributed mostly to it, and the owner of the land, of course, contributed to. He was a real not good guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and another time they moved to
cows
another.
with a fence post. And, you know,
Yikes.
Mom said that they moved to another farm one time because they offered to do some sharecropping there, and they had the all the crops were up, they were getting ready to harvest them, and they sold the land out from underneath them. And they didn't get any of their harvest from the crops, they just had to leave. With nothing but the clothes on their back and their car, remember?
Yep.
Wow,
That's really sad.
that is really sad. Yeah, that's really, really sad. Why, do you know why they got into the sharecropping in general, or was it just part of, like, that's how you made money with
It's
the land rush?
mostly how you made money in those days.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Was it part of, like, were they ever part of, like, a town that you know of, or was it kind of like they were just out in some land in Oklahoma?
For the most part, in and around Guthrie,
Okay.
Oklahoma.
Guthrie, Oklahoma. Yeah.
And his dad worked odd jobs too to make extra money.
Yeah, he went to work for the land surveying company and traveled all over. He was in Arkansas when I was born. I was 4 months old before he ever saw me.
Wow. Wow.
And the singing and the records he used to cut.
He used to belong to a band, and they made pretty good music.
Yeah.
2 uncles and a couple other guys. In fact, I cut a record when I was 3.5. You Are My Sunshine.
Oh, nice. That's cute. Yeah. You make any money off of those records, or?
Yeah, very little.
Okay.
Just a
Just
thing to do at that time, you
Yeah,
know.
just kind of for
They'd
fun.
get together and
Yeah.
play and sing and drink a beer, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Yeah. So that actually kind of talks about into the next question was the assimilation into the workforce. So you just kind of covered all that. Do you know anything about specifically like in the colonial times? Do you know how the Blackwoods or the Cones or really any of them that were how they assimilated into the workforce? Like what were they doing?
Yeah, you
At the
know, they have probably, Irish had trouble, but that was after that.
Right.
This is before that. And the Blackwoods were wealthy. There's a Blackwood Castle still standing in Ireland. And so they said they had a business, in fact, they still have a big business in Ohio,
Wow.
where they're from. But my great-grandfather, in those days, you know, when you have a big family, the youngest doesn't get much. And that's where my father landed, but he got the land in Kansas. But they didn't have any problem assimilating because they're part of the formation of this nation.
Right.
You know, I do know that we had, on my mom's side of the family, fought for the Union in the Civil War. My dad's side fought for the
Confederate?
We had
Wow.
now my brother had the swords, a rebel sword and a Union sword.
Wow. That's kind of crazy.
A saber, I guess they were.
Yeah. Yeah, so, okay, so you had the one side that ended up in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
The Confederate side, where were they at that they were fighting?
I think back then they were all in Arkansas
Oh, okay.
because they didn't move to Missouri until around World War I, I'd say.
Okay, I can't remember Arkansas. Was that a state at the time, or were they one of the states that were being fought over the slave state?
Yeah, well, you know how big Texas was. Texas assimilated, had all that land,
Mm-hmm.
and then when they became a state, they had to give it back. You know, to be small
Yeah.
because it was too big. So that would have been right before that. And I think Arkansas.
Trying to remember, because
They were a state.
they were a state because you had Kentucky. Well, you have to think about Ulysses S. Grant and his Western
Yeah.
Front. Yeah, so Arkansas would have been a state at the time. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then Arkansas was one of the first states that got taken by the Union too.
Yeah, well, you figure Colorado became a state in 1876.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was just right in that mess.
Mm-hmm.
And it was territory before that, though. That's when because Texas, this land came clear up into Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah, and before that it was part of the Spain's
Mm-hmm.
land, and yeah, that's crazy. That kind of took us on a tangent. Yeah, but so we had the Blackwoods were up in Ohio. Is that what you said?
Now, I don't, yeah, the Blackwoods are in Ohio.
Blackwoods were in Ohio.
The Cones, I know were in Colorado in the 1800s.
In the 1800s, so they were
At
already
least.
in the colony.
Yeah, and the
And then-
Loves, I'm not real sure of.
Not really sure. Okay, so the Arkansas would have been sheet,
Mm-hmm,
right?
right.
Do you know what they were doing for work? In
Farmers,
Arkansas?
they're farmers.
Farmers. They're
Yeah.
farming. Okay, it's agriculture. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, and then so as far back as we know, we've already kind of clarified this, but or already said this, but to clarify, so the Moors, as far back as we know, they settled in Oklahoma as part of the land rush. Do you know, we were talking about the ships that are in 1600s. Do you know where they end up landing? Obviously in the New
Where they
England
landed?
area, but
No, I tried, in fact, because we were going to do this, I kind of tried to do some research to see, because there's a Blackwood name on one of those early ships that came in. I can't remember, I think it was the lady who wrote all the genealogy books found it.
oh wow.
And so it would have been around, well, Plymouth. It'd be in that area,
Oh, okay.
I think.
You think? Yeah, no,
I'm
at
pretty
least
sure.
gives us a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Do you know where they settled? Like, as far back as you know, do you know where they settled? Like, obviously they came in, but, like, obviously not everybody stayed in that
Well, they
area.
were in the colonies, of course, during the Revolutionary War.
Right.
And then they migrated west to
Mhm.
Ohio.
Do you know which colony? No. Yeah.
I didn't study that good enough.
No, that's fair. No. I mean, it's crazy how much you do know from that far back. You
We
know?
talk about it a lot in our family,
Yeah.
with the books too.
Yeah, the books help
We're
a
really
lot.
blessed.
I mean, you have so many primary sources.
Yeah.
So this leads into the next one. This is actually one of my favorite questions that was on this list. So we'll start with the Moors and work our way this way. Were there any Native American impacts on the family? We already kind of talked about one with yours, and obviously I know we have Cherokee blood, but just anything you can tell us on that side of
I
things.
can't give you any specifics, but I can remember them talking about the Indians being around them.
Mm-hmm. In Oklahoma?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, they didn't, as far as I know, didn't have any problems with
Mhm.
them.
In terms of like the family history, was there, so obviously if we have Cherokee heritage a little bit, do you know who married or how that came to be? No?
No, I don't.
No?
It would have had to been great, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you're what, 16th?
yeah.
16.
16th, sure.
16th, so if we do that math, that would be 2 generations removed, right? Because it would be an 8th if you were a child.
His dad would be 8th, his grandfather would be
Grandfather would be
Half.
quarter.
Okay, so actually be, yeah.
his great-grandfather would be half.
Yeah, great grandfather would be half. Okay, which then so
So
that'd be
it would
their
have been 2 back from there, so no.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
have
really.
no idea.
No idea. Still interesting. Still very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If my cousin was still alive, she did a genealogy study on us, but I don't know who ended up with that or anything now,
Mm-hmm.
because both she and her husband both are gone, so I don't,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 of the kids are gone. So I don't know really where that information would have ended up.
Yeah. Do we know if it was so you were talking about in Oklahoma that there were Native Americans in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know were they Cherokee?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we would guess based off of the information that most likely while they were in Oklahoma was probably when that happened.
Yeah, I would say that's probably true.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, kind of shows like the kind of the sharecropping and like how the impacts of
Mm-hmm.
still trying to work it out with Native Americans in the pioneer stages of the country.
And, 16 kids on my dad's side. 9 on mom, so it's
Yeah,
really
it
hard
just-
to keep up with
Yeah, it just
who
goes.
and where, you know. And
Yeah.
they're practically all gone now.
Yeah.
I've got one cousin in Australia from there. you
Wow.
know.
Yeah. No,
Her-
it's funny
her
how.
dad moved there right after the. I was born already and probably 6, 7 years old when he moved to Australia. And that was after he fought in the war,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, like, listening, because, like, there's so many stereotypics of the sharecropping experience that kind of are your family. The
Yeah.
amount of kids,
Yep.
just all of it.
Yep.
That's kind of really cool. It's like, it's almost like it sounds like something out of a history book, like a narrative that got printed off of a,
Yep.
of a history book. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
What about on your side?
I'm also 16 Cherokee.
Oh, I did not know that. Did not know.
My
I always
fifth-
thought it was just on his side.
My 5th great-grandfather, something like that, figure it out. My mom used to tell a story. Now, you know how moms tell their kids fairy stories. She said that she was an Indian princess. I think she's just an Indian, but she told her, little kids, there's an Indian princess
Mm-hmm.
married
Yeah.
to Sheets family.
Sheets. So this is on the
so
Sheets
even
side.
they were in Arkansas.
Okay, so when they were in Arkansas, and it was a Cherokee tribe, you said? All the way, okay. It's kind of crazy.
There's
yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah, there's
Cherokees
several
just-
tribes within.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, okay. So while they were in Arkansas, and do you know if it was just like, obviously, for it to be in your blood, there would have to have been kids. Was there a marriage between the two families? Do you know of, or if it was just like?
The Indian and the, yes.
Yes, it was a marriage.
Yes, yeah, there was a marriage. My uncles looked very Indian,
Yeah.
except for my dad. He came out different, like.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Okay. So there was a marriage. Do you know any like stories or anything from that time? Like in terms of like I don't like just the narrative side of it. So were there issues with that marriage or any problems?
No,
or?
apparently not. They wouldn't. Okay. Now I know from his side they hid the fact that they had Indian in them, and because they could have got there's certain things that you can get when you
Mm-hmm.
and but I don't know about my side if they hid that fact because they talked about it. But
Mhm.
then now, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter now. But
It's like,
yeah.
well, I'm part Indian.
Uh-huh.
you
Yeah,
know?
people. Yeah, exactly. There's a pride in it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so there was like, so it doesn't seem like there was any
I haven't
issues
never
or
heard any stories.
yeah, no discrimination or anything like that you know.
Well, there was.
Well, sure, yeah, but I mean there was also discrimination with the Irish side of things as well
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah, there was in later years, but I think my side, the Irish family, because they didn't come from it's that potato drought that they had, and so they're all poor and coming over indentured servants, and they're actually treated like slaves.
Mm-hmm.
But my family it was already established in this nation by then, so.
Right. So just
And they didn't have any muck names, it's Blackwood Love, you never thought they were Irish.
right.
But they're Protestant Irish, it's just different.
Yeah, which that and it's funny because like if you think about like the name right, Moore,
Mm-hmm.
you would think that's where the Irish came from, but it sounds like it was more German, most likely. That the Moore is more
German and Dutch mostly, but there's Spaniard
Yeah.
and also the Indian.
Right.
They called it slop bucket Dutch at the time,
Yeah, that's
because there was so many different
yeah.
bloodlines.
Right. Do you have any idea of the Moore name specific, like where that is stemming from? No. Yeah. But we're guessing most likely the German. Yeah. Yeah. So like, but the Irish is actually on your side,
Yeah.
So like that's interesting because like I grew up always thinking, well, my last name's Moore. That obviously Irish.
Well,
You know.
are.
Yeah. No, for
You
sure.
are.
I have Irish, but it's
And
not for the
Moore is
reasons
an
that I
English
thought growing up.
name.
Yeah. Yeah, because
As far as I know, there wasn't any Irish blood on our side.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's French in his mother's side. Because her first name
Mm-hmm.
is Ferrar.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, but yeah, so really no UK correlations much that we know of at all for that name. So that all comes from your side. Yeah. So yes, you know, Irish is a big part of us, but it's actually from the other side. No, the side that I always thought it was.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not from, the name has nothing to do with the
Right.
Irish. Yeah, it's cool.
No.
Yeah, weird. All right, so there's the Native American side. Okay, so you already told a really good story, but I want to dive more into it here in a second. But do you know how the Civil War impacted the Moors at all? How the wars with,
You know, I don't remember that talking that much about it because being farmers, most of them didn't go fight the war. And I don't know of any that were like in the Civil War, you know, whatever. I don't know of anything
no?
to add to that.
So most of them stayed home and just kind of kept life as it is. And with Oklahoma being so far west,
Yeah.
it probably really had no impact other than that obviously they're a territory. So you,
Right.
do you know if they were, then this is really reaching at this point, but do you know if they were pro-Union or pro-Confederate?
I would think they were probably all Confederate.
Confederate.
Yeah.
Interesting. What makes you think that?
Because Oklahoma being that close to the borderline
Yeah. Okay.
of the South.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay, so they were probably rooting on the Confederate side to win, and then to take them in as a territory. Then
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that either. And then you just talked about on your side that you had both Union and Confederate. Union being the Ohio side, and Confederate being the Arkansas side. Have any cool stories or any? How did it really impact both sides? Do you have anything that you know?
I don't know about the impact. I know the great grandfather who fought with the Union lived with my grandmother for a while. He got pretty old and he pretty seemed I guess I better not tell the story she tells. Because my grandmother was a lady, okay, and they would have bridge club type thing, or pinochle, I can't remember, but a ladies group would come, and he would run through the house with this saber, and that's all I'm going to tell.
Yes. Okay.
It would embarrass her greatly.
Yeah. She's a lady, so yeah.
Yeah, very proper.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. That's still, I mean, great. I mean, it's kind of ties into it. Trying to think of a way to phrase a question that might spark something. So so with it being Ohio, it's pretty far north. Although these days, living in Ohio, a lot of people like to think they're south, but they're not. But Ohio is very north. Do you know of any, in terms of like the debates of the time, right? You know, we had states' rights, we had the slave debate. Do you know anything on the Union side, how they felt? Obviously, it seems like they were pro-Union. So they
that
were.
family that was very pro-Union.
Yeah, and including those debates as well too. You would say probably.
Yeah.
So very stereotypical northern.
Very.
Yeah.
That is, you know, like you said, that far north. It was. They're very pro-Union.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What about the Confederate side? Same stuff.
Daddy.
Impact. What was the
Yeah.
impact of the Confederate?
They were South. They were Southern. You know, so many soldiers fought because they were Southern. Not because they were. I mean, you know, farmers weren't necessarily slave owners. Not that they even had any issues with that at all. It's just because they were Southern, they fought for the Southern side.
Right, like almost like a nationality. Even though it was all part of the United States, when they became the South and the Confederate, it became their own nationality, and so they fought for that.
Yeah, because they really weren't pro-slave at all.
Right.
Actually.
Right. Well, and a lot of people weren't in the South.
Yeah.
You know, it was just the fact that they were part of the South. Yeah.
Southern pride.
Exactly.
There's still a whole lot of Southern pride down there.
Right. Yeah. So, losing the war, did that have any impact on your family in Arkansas? Other than obviously the Reconstruction afterwards, but
trying to think about what, because Daddy was born in the early 1900s, so they didn't migrate out of Arkansas until he was, well, I don't know. No, Daddy was born in Missouri, so Grandpa and Grandma moved there right after they married, because all the kids were born in Missouri.
Mhm.
So I don't know, maybe they just wanted to get away from that.
Yeah.
You know, they were simple farmers.
Yeah. So after the Arkansas thing, that might have pushed them to migrate into Missouri
It
just
might
to
have. Or
get
they
away
were
from
just-
all the debates.
Yeah, or
yeah.
there's just land available.
That's a good point.
Because they cleared their own land
Mm-hmm.
and started farming it. It's very interesting. Those stories were very interesting.
With them trying to clear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll dive into that here in a second because I'm sure I've got one that could probably talk about that. Okay, so they moved around the time of Reconstruction then. So
It must have been, because I'm trying to figure, because war was from 1876 to what? The Reconstruction, you know, it would last a while. So I would say yes.
yeah, because
I would say yes. Maybe they want to get away from all that.
yeah, it would have been 1890, I think. Yeah, I can't remember exactly the final date of Gettysburg. I'm trying to think of the Gettysburg address.
Because Daddy was born in 1919. When was your mom born?
17.
My daddy was born in 1919,
Okay,
and he's the baby of the family.
right. And his father was the one that started that farm in
Mhm.
Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
So most likely, then yes, most likely probably Reconstruction era was when they moved. Okay, so that kind of paints a picture that maybe the war kind of pushed them,
I think maybe.
or was one
yeah,
of the
Because
motivations.
Daddy didn't know. Because they didn't talk about it. They didn't talk.
Mhm.
I mean, they were very political, but not north-south stuff.
Right. Yeah, and it might just be something as simple as like, I don't like this, so it's one of the reasons. Also, there's land available. Yeah, so like it just all of it kind of wraps up into a
Exactly.
bow and we're off.
Believe it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, so it's the Civil War, and we just about Reconstruction. So your father was born in 1919, you said, and yours was born in 1917.
1909.
Yeah, his mom was born in.
Mom was born 1919.
Okay, 19. Okay, and you said your dad was 1909, like 09.
Yeah.
Okay, so born just around the time of the Great War, the First World War. Do you know how the First World War impacted them at all? Did any of them fight, or any of your family members fight in it?
Yeah, there was, oh golly, I had a couple uncles. Couple of cousins that did fight.
Yeah. All make it home, or
Yes.
yeah, all made it home.
Yep.
Do you know where they fought? No. Okay. What about your side?
I know they fought because we had a family member in the military in every war this nation's ever fought.
Oh, that's a very cool thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know they fought, but we didn't hear as much about World War I as we did World War II.
Okay. And we'll talk about World War II here in a second. Everybody make it home? Yeah. So other than fighting it, there really wasn't much of an impact of the First World War on the family? No?
No.
Yep. And do you know which side fought in the war? Like, so it would have been your father's parents. Or
No, my
no.
mom's family.
Your mom's
my
family.
mom's side, they probably all did.
And what's your mom's maiden name?
My mom, Blackwood.
Blackwood.
Cone.
Cone.
Her maiden name is Cone. Grandma's maiden name is Blackwood.
Okay. All right.
They changed the spelling of the word cone when they immigrated.
I think you've told me that story, but tell it again just for this.
Okay, it was spelled, because your dad did the research when they were in England.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be spelled Cohen to begin with, something like that. And then changed it to COEN. And then they changed it when they immigrated to America, they changed it to CONE. The original spelling of Cone was, it was Cohen. That's Jewish.
Jewish,
I think they're hiding their Jewishness
as they were
because of
immigrating.
persecution.
Right. Yeah, now again, I've been in the 1600s, right?
It
When
would
they
be,
would've-
yes, it would have
yeah.
been that early.
Yeah. What was going on in terms of persecution back in 1600s against Jewish?
Jewish people were kicked out of every nation they started, growing in. They were bankers and stuff, and so they had so much of the wealth. The nation states, the kings, would kick them out, and so there was, for them to change their name, you just know there was persecution. Just
Yeah.
change the
In
spelling.
the 1600s, and we're talking about Ireland area, right? No, or you're talking about when they immigrated to the U.S., they were scared of persecution in the United States,
No, it was in Ireland.
that they're
But
being
that's when
persecuted.
the name changes happened. And then the last name change was when they immigrated, when they signed in.
Okay,
It was the
so
ONE.
we can theorize that most likely they're being persecuted for Jewish heritage, even in Ireland, before. Okay, yeah,
Or they're afraid they would be,
Yeah.
there's always that.
right, and then fear of, yeah. Do you know when they were in? This is kind of going backwards, but I should have asked this earlier. Do you know if they were Protestant or Orthodox? What was causing their persecution in Ireland?
They're Protestant.
They're Protestant,
Their stories
yeah.
there, that's not very nice.
No, yeah, the Protestants obviously were.
Come on, if you're Protestant and Catholics in Ireland,
Right.
you could just, if you
Right.
know history.
Yeah, it's what pushed a lot of Irish to move to the United States,
Yeah.
or back that time the New
Mhm.
World. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Protestant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to read your history, they had a hard time getting out of Ireland,
Right.
even.
Right. Well, I remember, and this is kind of a tangent, but I actually do remember reading in one of my prior history classes that the Puritans actually left England and went to, I believe it was one of the Nordic countries,
Mm-hmm.
and then came over to the New World
Mhm.
because they were trying to escape there. That didn't work, so they escaped again.
They
Yeah.
get all their property taken, so they couldn't
Mhm.
afford, so then they had to raise money again to get another ship.
Right.
I know that's probably why my family migrated to Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
so they could leave from Scotland. They had more freedom in Scotland to migrate.
Right. Yeah, and it's the same thing with the Nordic states. I want to say it's William. It was a primary source that I read that I learned this from. It was William. I think it starts with a B. I can't remember, so I'm not going to say it. But it was a primary source that I read. That's exactly what happened. They moved to Poland to escape,
Yeah.
and then were persecuted there as well too.
Mhm.
And then there was an opportunity to
Yeah.
leave, and so he took the entire group.
And when you know it's part of your family history, and you start reading something, or you see it on the History Channel, you're just like,
Yeah, exactly.
It was
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Protestant. That's a very stereotypical out of the book story for migration as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Bringing it back to the World Wars. So World War One. It sounds like the only impact really on the family was just that we fought. That we had people that fought. Do you know how the Great Depression, especially being sharecroppers, were they in Colorado at this time, or were they still in Oklahoma when the
They were
Great
still in
Depression?
Oklahoma.
Still in Oklahoma. How did the Great Depression affect that?
Terrible.
Yeah.
Everybody just about lost everything
Yeah.
because of the depression, and at the same time they were having severe windstorms
Was this the Dust Bowl?
blowing the Dust Bowl. Yep.
Yep, the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the impact was, again, almost out of like a history book.
Yeah.
The Dust Bowl. Our family falls right into that impact.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that what pushed them into Colorado?
No, it was after, quite a bit after.
Quite a
the
bit
Dust
after?
Bowl, because
Okay.
I was 10 when we moved to Colorado, so
Okay.
it was quite a while after.
Yeah. How did the family survive through that?
by the hair on their chin.
Yeah.
They were
Still
all
sharecropping?
pretty much broke and without anything.
Wow. But still sharecropping, and that's how they survived.
Mhm.
So that's how they were getting money
Yeah,
during that time.
yeah.
Wow. I don't think we covered it when we were talking earlier, but did they have their own land when they were sharecropping?
No,
No.
no, they lived on the owner's land,
And
sharecropping.
sharecropped to that
So they
landowner.
got, like a third of the sharecrop because
Right.
they had to pay the
landowner.
owner.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was about, darn it, when Dad went traveling with that land survey outfit, he got screwed there again too.
Mm.
He was supposed to be doing so much work, and when he got that far away from home, all of a sudden they didn't have any work. So they sent him home,
Right.
pretty much broke again.
Right.
But he was ingenious in raising money back in those days for you
Yeah.
guys.
would
He figured
find-
out a way to keep sweet potatoes fresh throughout the winter so he could sell them
Yeah.
for money.
Wow.
And they went you trapping or just shooting and getting
Trapping
birds?
and hunting both. Yeah.
There's
Wow.
always a way.
Selling critters to people, so they'd have food.
Right. And so the story you were just talking about right there was, well, you were a kid, right? So that was your
Mhm.
dad. Did he learn that from his dad during the Great Depression era of trying to just
No, I
survive?
don't think
or-
so. I
No.
think he just decided he had to do it and did it.
Yeah.
That's the way they were back then,
Mhm.
it just,
You did whatever you had to
they'd
do.
figure something out and do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
We did a lot of trapping. When I was little, my brothers, would go out at night shooting stuff and trap skunks and whatever and sell their hides,
Mhm.
We'd go to school the next day smelling like skunk and they'd send us back home.
Wow. Wow. Crazy.
That's how we made our spending money.
Yeah. Well, and still sharecropping at the same time.
Yes,
Yeah. Wow.
Picking
Yes.
cotton.
Wow.
I had some of that. That's hard work.
Yeah, I bet so. Yeah. Okay. So your family made it through the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression without having to move,
Right.
without losing everything, almost everything, but still
Yeah.
had obviously a home
Right.
and a family, obviously. What about your side on the Great Depression?
They were in Colorado. That's my mom was born in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandpa, they raised rabbits and sold the meat.
Wow.
And then, trying to think of how long the Great Depression was. 17.
Well, the Great Depression would have started in the late 20s.
Yeah, okay. So, that's how my mom met my dad, because I don't know how Grandpa got the money. Maybe they owned the house or something and sold it. She never said. But he moved to Missouri and bought a farm, and he started farming. And it's a farm right next to my dad's family, and that's where they met.
That's your grandparents, you said, or your
My
parents?
mom and dad.
Your mom and dad met in Missouri.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then, when did they move to Colorado?
They moved back to Colorado. Well, Mom, okay, my great uncle had a horse ranch right where, it's cattle ranch too, right where the Air Force Academy is.
Oh, wow.
He sold some of his land so the Air Force Academy could build
Mm-hmm.
there. And he needed help. He was also an architect, and I don't know why he needed help. So Grandpa sold the farm and they moved to Colorado to help Uncle Billy on his ranch.
Mm.
And then Mom and Dad rode back and forth, and so she jumped on a train and went to Missouri and married him.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so family, that side of the family was still in Missouri. She just hopped on the train, moved to Colorado, and
working there.
Yeah. Wow. That's kind of crazy. But that would have been after or during the Great Depression?
That was kind of after the Depression. I'm kind of getting stories of during World War II and Depression.
Okay.
And the
So
rabbit
kinda-
thing was during the Depression.
Okay.
And then just as probably while it's coming to an end is when Grandpa moved to Missouri.
Okay. So,
I'm trying to figure out dates in my head.
okay. So, on one side, and I'll have you say the names as I say them, just for clarification's sake. So, on one side, during the Reconstruction of the Civil War, moved to Missouri,
Mhm.
right? Which side would that be?
Dad,
Sorry, last name.
Sheets.
Sheets.
Sorry.
So Sheets moved to Missouri during
Uh-huh.
Reconstruction,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then during the Great Depression, well, the other side did. Which side is that?
My mom. Sorry, Cone.
Cone. Yeah, okay. So you have the cones.
Yeah, Cone.
Okay, so you have cones during the Great Depression. Or just before, maybe?
Yeah,
Or just after?
just after, towards it was ending,
Okay.
because they know they spent most of it in Colorado,
Okay.
and
And-
they didn't suffer too much.
Right. And cones were also Arkansas before Missouri? Or was that the Sheets side?
That was the Sheets.
The cones
No,
were where?
The Cones never went. They went from Kansas. My
Kansas.
grandma went from Kansas. She was a school teacher,
Okay.
and she moved by herself in those days from Kansas. She taught in a little one-room schoolhouse by Rabbit Ears Pass.
Wow.
That's where she met my grandpa.
Wow. Okay. So yeah. All right. So then they moved to Missouri after the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Before that, they were in Kansas. So how did the Great Depression affect them in Kansas? That
I don't know about that.
No, you don't
Well,
know.
they had the huge farm,
okay? So they were farmers
so
during the
I
time.
don't think it affected them much.
Wow. That's good.
They
Okay.
still have that big farm. Whole
Wow.
family, Blackwoods.
Wow. That's cool. Okay. So really impacted your side more than your
Yeah.
side. Mainly because of sharecropping. So
Yeah.
I mean,
or-
sharecroppers
or
everywhere.
What part of the country, too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I guess the location also would impact that as well too.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's the Great Depression, and then moving on to the World War II. We'll start here. How did World War II impact the Moors?
There again, mostly just the being there fighting.
Okay.
My mom's side had a brother and a cousin there. My dad's side had 3 brothers there.
Wow. But your dad did not fight.
No,
No.
no, he wasn't in the army at all.
No. Yes, and
They all made it back home.
all made it back home.
Yeah.
Do you know specifics on what they were doing in the army, or if they were
Just
Infantry?
Infantry, yeah.
infantry? Okay. So this would have been in the timeline wise, this is your parents, right? During World War II, your grandparents probably still alive at the time in World War II.
Yeah, I think both sides were.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of my grandfathers and only one grandmother. I went to her funeral when I was 5,
Okay. It's pretty young.
and the rest of them I know nothing
You know
about.
nothing about. Okay. All right. So, but at least your parents, obviously, during World War II, and obviously they had family members that went over World War II. Do you know? Because obviously a big debate at the time, either being isolationist or actually going over there and fight fascism. Do you know what side of the aisle the Moors were on that?
Probably going over there fighting the fascists probably
Yeah.
would be what was considered then.
Yeah. Yeah. Just based off of what you know of your
Yeah.
parents and family. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So they picked the right side of the aisle. What about the Sheets? How did the Sheets be, or Sheets through that entire group? Obviously, we have this, again, reiterating
all
the
of them.
Sheets, Cones, Loves, and Blackwoods. how did
we
World War
didn't-
II impact?
Yeah, we weren't in a lot of contact with the Love family because it was like, I don't know, they moved
Yeah.
out. But anyway, okay, my dad and his 3 brothers were all in the army during World War II.
Infantry or?
Daddy was a supply sergeant. He was in Italy. I
Italy,
don't know
okay.
what Uncle Stan did, but Uncle Wilbur was in Saudi Arabia working with the oil field people. You know, there was a
Wow.
big fight over
Mhm.
that during World
In
War
the Middle
II.
East, yeah.
And I don't know
Still
about
is.
Uncle Woody, but I know I've seen pictures of all of them in their uniforms. But those are the ones I know the most about.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
And they were all in kind of different areas too.
yes,
Wow.
yeah, they're all overseas.
Yeah, not in the very typical France, Normandy.
No.
They were kind of in the other.
Yeah, and you know, well,
Dad was
Italy,
Dad was in Italy.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, which is one you don't hear about a lot.
exactly,
as well
but
either.
there's Mussolini.
Yeah, Mussolini, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
So, but Daddy was in the latter part of the war,
Mm-hmm.
after the fighting,
Okay.
more than anything, because having 3 sons already in there, my grandfather did not want him to go.
Yeah.
And they kept him because he could stay home legally, no draft or
Right.
anything, because they were farmers.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, that's a very interesting fact. I didn't know there was a provision for farmers
there
that they
was.
didn't
Oh,
have to
There
go.
was,
Yeah.
because they needed food,
Right.
you know, and so he could stay home, but
Mhm.
he just couldn't. He just couldn't, so he joined the army.
Wow.
Um,
As far as I don't know what the rules were. I think you're only allowed to have so many family members in the war at the same time.
Yeah,
so
well-
I
Yeah,
wonder.
Yeah, but back then there wasn't.
Well, I think. Well, if I remember right, World War II is where that started.
uh-huh.
That you could only have a certain amount of family
Well,
members.
on the
I think it
Blackfoot
was
side,
After World War II, I think.
yeah, it must have been because there were 5 Blackfoots
Yeah.
from Kansas went at the same time, all of them in the Navy.
I think it
Wow.
was because of World War II, there were so many family members that got killed,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
I think that's why they made
Mhm.
Okay.
that rule,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think.
Because they were all grandma's nephews.
Yeah.
Wow.
But at the same, same month, they all went.
And they all came home.
As far as I can tell, I still have the newspaper clipping from them all going at once.
Mm-hmm.
I sent your dad a picture of it. It's so old and yellow. I should do something to keep it.
Right.
And then my uncle, my mom's brother, he was in the Navy. He was on a battleship, and he fought in a bunch of major wars in
Pacific?
in the Pacific
In the Pacific.
against the Japanese.
Oh wow, that's really cool. Do you know which boat he was on, or which
No,
ship?
No, I don't. But he was a radioman.
Radioman. Was he
Yeah.
on a? Do you know if he was a carrier or a battleship?
I think it was a battleship.
Battleship.
He used to talk about some of the big battles he was in a little bit, you know.
Mhm. That's very cool.
It was a long time, and then after the war was over, they didn't know what to do with all these servicemen. So they dry docked the boats wherever they were, you know, and the servicemen had to clean the hulls out in the hot sun in the South Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
and he got skin cancer
Wow.
from that. But
Wow,
it was
that's
him.
an interesting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it
Wow.
was interesting. He retired from the Navy. He stayed in the Navy.
Even after the war.
Mhm.
Wow, that's really cool. Okay, so as far as you know, everybody came home.
Mhm.
So, but again, asking the kind of same question, were they? It seems that since everybody did join, that they were very pro fight the fascists.
Yeah.
That kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
side of the aisle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
They
no
were
debate
strong
on that.
Americans.
Yeah. So before they joined, I guess I could ask this to both of you because I didn't really ask this to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start here, work that way, like I have been. Before the war, do you know if they felt that way as well too? Like they were wanting to, like, let's enter the war. Why are we not joining?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What about your side?
Same.
Same.
Uncle Ray entered it really early. He just, by the skin of his teeth, age-wise, he made it in the Navy.
Really?
Yeah, they were just going.
17, I think, wasn't he?
Hmm?
17, wasn't he, when he joined?
I think so. He's really young.
Wow.
Really young.
Yeah, just children going off to war. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's really cool. That's actually really cool stuff, though. Yeah.
Yeah, well, my mom, cause Daddy was with the Italians, and they were so war torn and poor, and he worked with them a lot because of what he did. And Daddy had an Italian secretary, and Mom, you got rationing back here, so Mom would send her rationing and silk stockings to his secretary because they had no way to ever get them.
Uh-huh.
And so the secretary invited, I don't know if you want this on there or not.
Of course you
The
do.
secretary invited him over for supper one night, he and the other guy in the office that worked together.
Mhm.
And they knew they were poor. And the guys didn't want to overeat, take food from the family, so they ate before they went. So they got to these girls' family, there was a whole family there, and they sat beside them a plate of spaghetti that was just heaping. And you have to be polite and
And
eat
you
it.
have to
raw.
eat it,
And
yeah.
Daddy said they were so miserable, it was really awful.
It's awesome though. It's such a cool story of like that interaction though. So.
Yeah, it was. He
Yeah.
could speak Italian
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit, and it's so similar to Spanish. Daddy and I had fun when I was in Spanish with his
Mhm.
Italian and my Spanish. It was
Yeah,
really
you're just
interesting. Yeah.
comparing them, and
Mhm.
yeah, that's actually really cool. I didn't actually know that Italy was that poor during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually really cool knowledge.
Yeah,
from-
personal knowledge, like when your dad was overseas,
Yeah,
it's
you
just-
learn-
the people.
Yeah, stuff that's not in the books.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
the stuff that doesn't get talked about in the books, that's really cool. But in terms of other than fighting, it didn't really impact anything at home. You don't
No,
think?
not too much. What my grandfather did before Daddy went in, he took Mom to the movies
Mm-hmm.
because they had the war news at the movies. He wanted Mom to see all the horrible things so she could convince Daddy not to go. Didn't work.
Yeah, probably just made him itch a little bit more towards it, if I had to guess. Yeah.
Well, it just scared Mom. That's
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's actually really cool. All right, before moving on to the other ones, so you were born in 44, right? Which would make you 48.
Mhm.
Okay.
Good job.
All right, math. Trying to remember. I was based your age off of. I know he was 44. For some reason, I just remember that he was born still during the war.
Four.
So that's why I can remember that. So
Yeah.
then I just go off of that. So you'd have been too young for the Korean War then,
Yes,
correct? Right? Because I know you went to Korea, but I wanted to
yeah.
just clarify that
The war
historical
was like
context.
53, I think.
Yeah, so you would have been 9 at the time. Yeah, so too young. Okay, but is there any effect on your family from the Korean War at all?
No, not that I can remember anything of, no.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Uncle Ray was still in the Navy.
Right. I was gonna bring that back
Yeah,
up. Yeah.
But there was nothing, nobody was ever worried about him, so I don't know if the Navy was that much involved in Korea.
Probably not.
Not really.
Yeah.
Mostly land fighting.
Yeah. Okay. I figured as much. That wasn't even in my question list. I just wanted to
Yeah.
scoot by that.
Uh,
But I guess that would make the next big thing being the Vietnam War. So how did the Vietnam War affect? At this point, obviously, you're an adult.
I was in the Army at the time, and I put in to go over there,
Mm-hmm.
but the company commander where I was at wouldn't sign the papers for me to go. I was a mechanic at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted me working on his Jeep, so he wouldn't sign the papers for me to go over there.
So it was just about his Jeep, or was there any other
Yeah,
ulterior
yeah,
motives?
it was just that.
Really.
And it's a good thing because 3 of my buddies were killed over there,
Oh.
and I would have been at the same time with them. you know.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how they died?
Yeah, they were shot.
Okay, I didn't know if it was.
One of them was a gunner on a helicopter.
Okay.
You
And,
know,
and the helicopter got
standing
shot.
out there shooting, and got shot.
Okay.
And the other two, one of them had a bomb blown up, or
That's what I was gonna ask, cause I know.
and the other one, I don't remember how he died.
Yeah.
But we were all gung ho to go over there at the same time, but a couple of commanders said, "Nope, you ain't going."
Wow.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you guys together at the time?
After. Well, I mean,
After.
I've known him since I was 12 years old.
Right. So you knew of each other,
Yeah.
but not together.
Yeah, I went to school with her brother and had a job or two with him,
Mm-hmm.
so I knew the family.
Yeah.
But no, we didn't get together till
67.
67. I got out in 66, so.
That's when we started dating, it was right after you got out and then got married in 67.
So, but the Vietnam War was still going.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay. Well, you guys got married.
yeah.
How did that did it impact you guys at all? I mean, obviously you're in Colorado, so it's not like out east where you
Yeah,
know all the
no.
protests and all that stuff was going
Yeah.
on.
No, there was a lot going on, and whenever anybody would come home, you know, people treated them like shit,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about all the effect it had on us, really.
Right. All right. Yeah.
Other than the amount of guys that were dying over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I almost said uncles. Any of your brothers go?
No,
No.
no.
They're all
One brother
decently older than you,
didn't
then?
go. One brother, the oldest one, was in the National Guards,
Okay.
and he didn't go. And my other brother was in the Air Force. He was a mechanic. He didn't go. He was in Montana most of the time.
Hmm. Yeah, and for clarification's sake, how many brothers?
2.
Two brothers. Older.
Yes.
Yeah. So. Okay.
One 5 years older and one 7.
Yeah, quite a bit older.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then no, you have two
No.
sisters.
My brother was in the Air Force during,
She had 2 brothers.
Two brothers.
I have 2 brothers, but he was too young to go.
Yeah.
Bobby was in the Air Force. He's computer
Programmer.
programmer in the Air Force. That was when computers took up a whole warehouse.
Right. Yeah.
And so, of course, he wasn't in the
Yeah.
fighting thing. And I was
Right.
just sitting here trying to remember when Uncle Ray got out of the Navy. Because he moved to Colorado when I was in high school. So it's just right around the time of Vietnam
Mm-hmm.
that he was still in the Navy
Okay.
a little bit. But as far
Yeah.
as impacting, of course it impacted us.
Right.
Vietnam War impacted this whole nation.
Right.
We all had, I don't think I know of anybody who doesn't know somebody who died, because there's so many deaths. School friends, you know, a good family friends, his son died. Like several kids I went to school with died. It's, you never forget that. It's funny, you don't forget their names,
Right.
you know. And as far as impacting, you know, okay, in school, I graduated in '66, so when we had speech, it was like, it's a political thing, you know, it's such a turmoil.
Mhm.
So, at that time, I believed the politics of the day. I believed we had a reason to be over there at that time.
That was gonna be my next question.
And so that was my speech, you know, when we went through that, so.
Yeah.
It was not,
So at the time, you felt like it was justified to be over there.
at the time, yeah, until I talked to guys who just came home and the way they were treated. Oh, that was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, obviously the cheating would be after the fact, but them being over there for the people, both this is a question for both of you guys, them being over there, they felt like they didn't need to be over there.
No, they felt like they needed to be there
Okay.
because the government said you need to be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And military, that you're trained to follow that line of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it was kind of almost like
yeah, they really brainwash you.
right. Okay. So
So
they
you're gung ho to go.
right. That makes sense. Okay, so they never felt like because you know obviously this is all very romanticized nowadays, especially for my generation.
Yeah.
But you always see the stories of people who are like, "Oh, we didn't need to be over there. Why are we here?" But that
Yeah.
probably wasn't as accurate as
No,
most of the people felt like they
like
should be.
I had a friend here in town, Bill Vick. He was over there and he talked about
Oh, the story.
going down the fire line, you know, and stuff blowing up all around you, you know.
And the tunnels, he talked about the tunnels.
It was
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah, it is.
But he never felt like it was.
He wondered.
You did wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know about Dave. He was over there.
Yeah.
Didn't Dave do 2 tours?
No.
Not just one. But the PTSD, that was before PTSD was a thing even. So these guys weren't getting help.
Right.
And it was not good.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, and then there again, them coming home and getting treated like.
Yes.
Well, you couldn't wear a uniform. They weren't allowed to wear a uniform coming home on leave. Because the way they were treated, seriously, it was
just-
that bad.
That's scary.
And they didn't have a choice because that's when the draft was in. So how can you treat somebody who's made to go like that?
Mm-hmm.
Because there was also the other stories that's coming out that weren't true,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Kind of the start of the media.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
Yep. All right. So that's basically everything I had. I did like. Are there anything that you can think of? I'll start there and work just like I have been. Anything you can think of that is a interesting factoid about our family history that like we didn't talk about with all the we talked about all the major events. Anything that you think of from our country or anything that really impacted the family in a way that would be interesting?
From the family being in the military and knowing what happened whenever
Mm-hmm.
and just being in the military, you know, and
Right.
that brotherhood of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you definitely feel like our family, that side of the family, has a lot of pride in the country because of
Absolutely.
a lot of pride, patriotism, nationalism. Yeah. But outside of the wars, there wasn't like other than not really not
No,
like an
just
event that happened.
Knowing that they came through the Dust Bowl and the
Mhm.
Depression and being there for the land rush and, you know,
Right. Yeah.
just pride in the country.
And there were still Moors. I just kind of going back to that. There were still the Moors back in Oklahoma
Yes.
during the Dust Bowl as well
Yes.
too. Yeah. Yeah. So the name all the way back there. Any non-event things on your side that you can think of? That
Non-event.
the ones that I didn't talk about,
Yeah.
like
Well,
that impacted the family.
we talk
a lot.
about the military, you know, your dad, my
Right.
son,
Mhm.
he retired from the Air Force.
Right.
This is just, our family is a military family,
Mm-hmm.
period, all
Right.
the way through.
All the way through.
And I'm a history buff,
Yeah.
you know, so knowing your family and then reading a history, you know, I always loved history and I always am glued
Mhm.
to whatever historical thing there is, because we're all tied in.
Right.
The true history of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a nation to be proud of.
Right.
It's a nation that needs some help right now, but other than that, that's who we are. We're patriots,
Right.
but we're also very strong Christians.
Right.
Proud of the flag,
Mm-hmm.
you know, seeing the guys that wouldn't stand for the flag, you know,
Mhm.
the football players
Mm-hmm.
really
That has impacted us a lot.
impacted us a lot.
Yeah.
They're very hurtful
Mm-hmm.
because they don't know.
Mhm.
I don't believe that they're ever connected to the military enough to know what it did to the military mindset. You know, they think they thought about it differently. You know that,
Mm-hmm.
but but they didn't understand what they were doing to the military.
Right. And
It
of
was-
course the feelings of mindsets that come with it.
Yeah.
And even the Confederate flag, you know, that's part of it too.
Yeah. And definitely the different takes that
Proud
have kind of come
Southerners,
in.
yeah.
Different stories
Mhm.
connect. I've all heard totally different stories connected to the Confederate flag than what you hear on the news.
Right.
Totally opposite.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's nothing, it's not a slavery flag. It's not to them.
Right.
We live in the South right now. And I've not seen any racism there.
Right.
And this is Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It's deep South.
So many,
Intermarriages, good close friends. In fact, I know a story about a whole town and the Ku Klux Klan tried to move in. This is in Texas. And everybody in town, whites and blacks together, held hands and absolutely refused them entrance into their town.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah.
So you don't hear those stories.
Right. Well, and that's exactly
You
what
just hear
I'm,
the bad stuff.
and that's the kind of stuff exactly what I'm thinking of. Is like, so like basically every question I asked was around the war, or one of the big historical events that are all the like staple points of,
oh, I can remember as a kid, you'd get on a bus to go somewhere and the blacks all had to sit clear in the back.
Mm.
They
Yeah.
were,
And that was in the
Yeah.
50s, right?
oh yeah.
The 50s, yeah.
Yeah.
So right before the civil rights movement. Yeah.
Yeah, but
And I'm
you-
not saying there never was racism, because our granddaughter-in-law is black,
Mm-hmm.
and her grandfather is amazing. I just love him to pieces. I only got to meet him twice before he passed, but he's amazing. And he was treated badly,
Mm-hmm.
very, very. It makes me mad because he was such a neat man.
Right.
Well, even if he wasn't, it's just not right. You don't do that.
Right.
Humans.
The humans in general, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I guess I didn't even talk about the civil rights movement and how that impacted the family. Obviously, it being in Colorado, it wasn't as a contentious of a state with a lot of that stuff.
Well,
But
when we first moved to Colorado in 54, there was a sign.
all right, resetting the interview. Like once again, this is April 16th. Just resetting the interview from a technical issue. Again, speaking with my grandmother, Leslie Moore, and my grandfather, George Moore. And we were just talking about the civil rights. So I did want to kind of reset that. And this will be the last question for you guys. So you're talking about, we had a little bit of a glitch there, but we were talking about the really the feelings and the thoughts and the sights and how it felt during the civil rights time, specifically the 50s. So from a historical side of things, you guys lived it. You lived the civil rights time frame. Now you were in Colorado, so it's very much different. And you were just talking about like Colorado, again, kind of resetting. I don't know if it caught on the video. You were talking about Colorado was basically was one of the headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan, which is information I did not know. So maybe there is actually more relevance than I thought there was for Colorado. Most of the fighting and the issues and the debates were out east, southeast specifically, in the southern states out there. But I would just I'll start here and work my way that way. What do you remember of the 50s and early 60s during the time that you probably heard on the news? All the fights out east, I would assume. Was there anything like that here, or how did you guys talk about it back then? Or
I was still in Oklahoma most of that.
Mhm.
And there was quite a bit of keeping the whites on one side and the blacks on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of discontent, letting them go to swimming pools. They would have to be in a certain spot, or movie theaters, they'd have to be in a certain spot. That kind of stuff. Like when you get on a bus, they had to sit clear in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And just some hate and discontent of interracial marriages didn't really happen at that time.
Mm-hmm. So it was just a lot of segregation. It
Yes.
was really what you lived through, what you experienced was just, it was segregation, and people liked it that way, it seemed like.
Yes, that part of the country, that's what they believed, that's the way they were raised,
Mm-hmm.
so they continued that.
Right.
And just shortly thereafter, we moved to Colorado. And the town we moved to had a sign outside of town,
Mm-hmm. Which you said earlier, which
which
yeah.
I said earlier. And
Yeah.
as far as the schools, I don't remember any problems in the schools with it, or the swimming pools, movie theaters here. This town, there wasn't that many here.
Yeah.
They hadn't, I think there was only one family here at that time,
Mm-hmm.
till Hewlett Packard moved here. And then they brought a bunch of them in from California out in there. But it didn't really change that much when they came here.
Right.
Everybody seemed to get along all right.
Yeah. So it's kind of almost like a blissfully ignorant kind of situation where people just didn't know because they really weren't in the middle of it because there
Right.
really wasn't that much diversity in Colorado.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting.
yeah.
See, that's what I thought was going to be before I asked the question about civil rights was that, you know, Colorado is a very stereotypically Caucasian white state. So I didn't think there would be a lot. And then, you know, hearing your side of that with the Ku Klux Klan thing, then I was like, okay, this might actually be a little bit more
Probably
interesting.
in
So,
cities.
Basically, it was whites and Mexicans
mhm.
here.
Yeah, Hispanic Americans. Yeah. Yeah. Which kind of was a different issue at the time than what was going on with the civil rights and everything.
Right.
And there wasn't any segregation between whites and Hispanics in that time, was there?
No, there wasn't any segregation, but there was a lot of
Hate.
hate and discontent because they were here and
Right.
the way they acted and the way we acted, you know, it was,
Right.
other than that,
Right.
I
So like
mean,
just like kind of a
there wasn't
different-
any gunfights here,
Right.
nothing, you know. at
Yeah,
that-
I know like big
At that time.
and you don't remember any like big protests or
No.
any
No.
no nothing like that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. What about yours? Kind of asking the same questions.
Yeah.
What is it? Do you remember your experience at that time? And,
Loveland was a small town,
mm-hmm.
and I think small towns were so separate from any of that garbage.
Right.
Some of it. Some of our maybe attitudes might have been impressed a little bit with what we saw on the news, because I was shocked to my toes. I didn't know people treated other people that way. I honestly did not. And the more through the years I heard about it, the angrier about that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
No,
And do you think most people in this area were that way?
pardon?
Do you think most people in this area were that way?
I don't know, like he was talking about the Hispanics. Now, my mother worked for a canning company here, and we were friends with a lot. Well, you know, I told you my mother absolutely refused. No,
Mm-hmm. Right.
there's not a thing. You don't do that. And so we were always friends. I said, you know, one of my best girlfriends was Hispanic. It's not a big deal.
Right. So at least in the family side of things,
No.
it really had no impact
No, the only thing
whatsoever.
I ever knew about such things was from the news, and the news slants it the way they want to.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really learn anything. You just
Right.
you do become aware
Right.
that happened. And
Yeah. But you didn't hear, what about in Colorado itself? Did you hear about any
No.
protests or anything?
mm-mm.
Do you remember, and this goes to either of you, do you remember what it was like here when the Civil Rights Movement got passed? Do you remember what the thoughts or debates or anything during that time?
I was glad. I know I was happy.
No, everybody was just glad it was over and off the news.
Yeah.
You know.
And was it immediately off the news? I mean, as someone who didn't live through it, you know, all I get to see is, you know, all the protesting, and this rights gets passed, and then it's over, which I'm sure wasn't the actual case. You know,
Correct.
Like, you know, like that's not how things work. It doesn't
It
just
took a while
stop.
for it to.
Calm down.
Yeah.
It calmed down.
Yeah.
But again, it didn't affect us here. It just didn't,
Yeah.
except for our, head knowledge,
Right.
because we never were around any of those protests. now I hear stories of the Martin Luther King March, and I wish I was there,
Mhm.
you know. I wish I'd known Martin Luther King Jr. better, you know.
Right.
Because we just got snippets from the news.
Yeah, being this far out west, it just, you know, it wasn't.
And it was
Same.
either negative or positive, depending on the station you watch, I think. I don't
Mhm.
know, because sometimes it was very negative, and he wasn't a negative man.
Right. So it's
He
very
didn't
similar to
become
today.
positive, so yeah, look how it's changed today,
Yeah. Yeah.
according to the narrative they want to put out.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't think we ever listened to these that much.
We didn't.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. That was good information. Like, I never, you know, like, it sounds like there's a lack of history with civil rights, you know, based off
Right.
that.
Basically.
But
Right.
really, that is kind of part of the history, you know, in
Mhm.
Colorado, that it's like,
Yeah.
you know, blissfully unaware, you know, like, when you're not in the middle of it, you don't have the emotions of it, and people don't have the same kind of hate like they did out east towards that movement
Yeah.
or love for the movement, whichever side. You know, there really wasn't sides, it sounds like, which is
Yeah.
still part of the history,
Right.
Right.
you know.
Well, and I think the Ku Klux Klan thing in Denver was before all that stuff started in the South.
Right,
You know, that's when they were the most active. They're kind of settling down a little bit,
right,
I think, at that time.
yeah,
When I was, you know, aware of
right.
life.
Yeah, so you never heard of any issues with the KKK
Mhm.
up north, or
No.
No.
really even in Denver or anything? You didn't hear?
No,
Okay.
I just read about it years later.
Right.
You know, I was reading about it and I was like,
Yeah, I didn't even know about that. That's very interesting. All right, well, that will conclude our interview. Again, April 16th. It is now 2:56. That concludes the interview between myself, Robert Moore, Leslie Moore, and George Moore. Thank you.
You're welcome.
and goodbye.